So Yashkoyach to everyone who's here on time. We're learning a mimer today in Likutei Torah, and it's on page 168 in Parshas Matos. It's a short mimer, V'shama Aviha es Nidro. We have a stack of Likutei Torahs in the back of the room, for those of you who would like to look in. And I want to take a few minutes to speak a little bit about the background of the mimer. So before we get inside, I just want to share the arum a little bit. So firstly, we know that the Gemara says Tfilos b'makom tmidim tiknum, that the 3 times a day that we daven are connected the karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash. The Ben Ish Chai says, others, that Mizbeach is Gematria 57, 3 times 19. We find it many times in the Torah, by the Rabbi Levke, that we find the remez of that the karbanis and tefillah are related. Also, we find that the word tambit, it says avoda she bilev zu tefillah, avoda she bilev. So if we take the word lev, lamed beis, the way they're sounded, lamed has a mem dalid, and beis has a yud and a sof. So inside the lev, hidden in the lev, if we take away the lamed and the beis, we have the letters of Tomid. In the beis we have the yud and the sof, and in the lamed we have the mem and the dalid. So the carbon Tomid is in the lev, is hidden inside the davening. Chassidus also brings that we say in davening every day, Es karbani lachmi leishai. So Es karbani, Aleph through Tov. Es, Aleph through Tov. In other words, the tefillos, all the words of davening, they are karbani, they become the karban. So the connection of davening and the karbanis becomes very strong. In karbanis we have chelev and dam. The dam is passion, dam is warmth. The Rebbe Rashab writes that in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, either all people were not enticed by Gashmias, it didn't talk to them. The only thing that was significant was only Alikus, and that's why the Dam went to the Mizbeach. All the Karbanis have an inyan of spraying the blood, the Hazah, or they were completely Avodah Zarah, just completely distant. In other words, it was such intensity. Either Gashmias Ha'olam meant nothing and it was only the Abistair, or they were completely invested in Gashmias, they couldn't free themselves. So that's the inyan of Dam, the inyan of passion, and the avoida of davening is to draw Varmkeit, to bring chamimus, to bring warmth to Torah and mitzvahs. That we shouldn't fulfill mitzvahs, just mitzvahs anoshim milumadav, by way of rote or without emotion. That's one part of davening, that's the dam. Then there's the chelev. Chelev, the Rebbe Rashab, I don't know how advanced of a diet he knew about dieting, but he says like this: fats only develops when people are in a state of pleasure, not in a state of work. When people are sweating, when people are burning calories, so burning calories happens from resistance. So he says when you lower the resistance, that's when you get chelev. So he says, yeah, there's a big inyan of serving Hashem with Kabbalah's oil. It's a big topic, Kabbalah's oil. But in Kabbalah's oil, you're not going to have any chaylev. There's not going to be any joy. You know, the simcha, that's the other part of davening. That your avodas Hashem should be, you should feel like you're in a state of menucha with avodas Hashem. Not that it's a battle, not that it's a fight. Only if you're in a menucha state, there you could have chaylev in avodas Hashem. So that's one nakoda, which in the Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab, that's based on this Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, just in an organized way, that davening is connected to karbonos. In karbonos, there's chaylev and dam. Dam is warmth, chaylev is pleasure. The inyan of davening is to develop simcha and pleasure, and simcha and warmth in avodas Hashem. That's one inyan. Okay, the next inyan. In Chassidus, we talk a lot about, kula kameka lo chashiv. In front of the Abistair, everything is like naught. The question becomes, that's a chiddush? Like for a moment we were doubting it, like we were going to have an arm wrestle with Hashem. We weren't sure if kula, like we are chashuv. Well, what's going on? What's the message? What's the inyan? So the Alter Rebbe explains the idea, kula kameka lo chashiv, is that in our relationship with Hashem, we have a relationship with Mamale Kol Almin, and we have a relationship with Soiviv Kol Almin. The relationship with Mamale is what we would call a soulful relationship. We meditate, we reflect, we develop emotions, we develop a connection. All of that is a connection with, in other words, that Hashem becomes revealed in our life. There's a oir eliki, elikus, elikai. There's a koyach of Hashem inside of us that we feel and we experience. It's a soulful connection. Then there are mitzvahs. Mitzvahs transcend. Mitzvahs are soiviv kolam. Mitzvahs transcend what we feel. So the Alter Rebbe says, think a person, what's the bittul? Kula kameka lo chashiv. When a person realizes that all my meditation and all my emotion and all of my soulfulness, the connection that I get with Hashem is nothing relative to the connection that I get from doing a mitzvah. In other words, my actions, my maaseh has so much more significance than my thoughts and my emotions. That's where the bittul comes from. The inyan of nafshi ka'afar la'kol tiyeh is not just saying, oh, I'm nothing to the legabe the Abistair kula kameka lo chashiv. That's not the point. The point is the humility comes from, where is kiddushonu? Where do we develop a union with Hashem like marriage? Through an act of a mitzvah. So maaseh, doing with our hands and feet, that's really what's significant. My machshavas, my emotions, that's nothing. That they pale in comparison. And that's an incredible isbeinus. And Alter Rebbe explains that that's the heightened significance when we recognize how precious maaseh is. That's what leads to these steps that the Gemara brings a brisa from Rabbi Chia about humility, prishus, kedusha, right? Each one leading, I think it's like 10 steps, one leading to the other. You know what I'm referring to, right? It's brought at the end of Masechta Soita in the Gemara, the brisa of Rabbi Chia, maybe in the Chofs. So the idea is that through kedusha, by recognizing that Asher Kitshonu, how do we connect to Hashem? Through maaseh, So Maisa becomes so significant. So you say, wait a second, I'm not going to engage in negative Maisa. Perishus, I realize actions are so important. Don't dismiss them. Don't allow yourself to engage in negative things in the world. And that's what brings to the higher level of connection to Hashem. So that's the second nakoda. The third nakoda, coming closer to this maimer, is that here we are in the beginning of the parsha, the first parsha, talking about nedorim. This whole idea of seyogim and nedorim, and Baruch Hashem, there are so many mitzvahs, right? We say, Rabbi Chananya ben Akashya Omer, Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakois es Yisrael. In the Chassidish Taich, Hashem wanted to refine the Jewish people, zichuch. So here, Balahem Teiro mitzvahs, He gave them a lot. There are many mitzvahs. So there's so much, and yet that's insufficient. And now on top of that, we have to have nidorim. We have to have our own limitations. So once we open up this discussion about nidorim, the Alter Rebbe brings, how about all of the harchokes? In other words, there are those things that a person as an individual takes upon themselves. But if we look at Yiddishkeit, there are so many chumras. And in the classic, the way the Alter Rebbe presents it, that most of Gemara and Shulchan Aruch happens in Bayis Shem. It's almost like in Bayis Rishon, they just learn Torah and that's it. All of the what we, in the Lashon, that there's in one of the Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe HaKtzorim, he says, the Shachen Taz and the Bayer Heitev. He brings like all the Noise Kelim in the Shulchan Aruch. There are so many chumras, there are so many dinim. All of that, what does all of that mean? What does it come from? What does it lead to? What is it all about? And of course it's understood that to many people, it's a burden. It's an incredible burden. People could feel like, I can't breathe. Someone said to the Chafetz Chaim that it's terrible that he wrote this book on Shmiras HaLoshen. He feels like he can never say anything anymore. And the Chafetz Chaim said, no, on the contrary, now you know what you could say. Now you know when it's okay to speak. So this incredible body, that the way the Alter Rebbe phrases it is that almost all of Shas is full of derabbanons. There are three types, right? There are gzeiros, takonos. In other words, three different ways that the halachos play out. Some with a offense, and some that independent of Torah, and so on. So what is this all about? So let's read a little bit inside. V'shama aviha es nidra. We'll see in the Hemshech how this is based on this pasuk. Asks the Alter Rebbe lahavin inyan dikdukei soifrim. What are all of these dikdukim that they're so particular, that are midrabbanon? She'onu royim kimat she'kol ha-Talmud molei mehalachos v'chumros. Right, the entire Shas, almost all of it is full with chumras, with stringencies of the Chachamim. Vayisifu kama gdorim usiyagim l'Torah shebiksav. So there are chumras and there are fences and there are gdorim. What is all of this about? Now it's also important to understand all of this is Torah. Right? It's part of Torah. It's not. Right? Everything that develops is all the body of Torah that's extending. I was listening to a shir from Rabbi Vechter, Rabbi Mendel Vechter, and he says, someone in the audience, brings up a question about, so it ended Bisman Talmud. So he says, no, in the last 5 years, let's say there were 3,000 Hagdaras before, now there are 5,000. He gives some example. He says, when you turn on the water in your home, there's a meter. You're turning it on Shabbos. How is that? Can you Is that okay? You're washing negavasa, you're doing a mitzvah, but you just turned on the meter. This is not for halachic purposes. You'll go ask your Rav exactly how that works. And then he talks about, in Hilchas Brachas, all the different kinds of foods that we eat that weren't around just a few years ago, and so on and so forth. So this incredible body of Gedorim. The Indian movement, this is understood, K'mesha Amru Razal al Posuk, Ki Toivim Deidecha Miyayin. Chazal tell us on the Posuk in Shir Ashirim, Toivim Deidecha Miyayin, that Amra Knesses Yisrael, the Makar HaNeshama says, Arevim Alai Divrei Seifrim, Yeser Miyena Shal Torah. The words of the Chachamim are more sweet to me than Pnimiyas HaTorah. Chassidus is very geschmack. What does it mean, Chassidus is very geschmack? To understand the Pnimiyas of Torah is very geschmack when we recognize, like was mentioned last week, that Rabbi Levke points out why the Purim on Sukkot, why they begin with 13 and end with 7. Right? 13, 12, 11, 10, right? The 70 Purim of Sukkot. So he says, because 13 is Mispar Katan of 130. 130 is the Gematria Ayin spelled out. Ayin, Yud, Nun is 130. And then the 70 is Ayin, is the 70 nations. So when we look at the Prate Pratius, and a person, every single part of Torah is 100% meduyuk. It gives you a great geschmack in Torah. But still, that Divrei Seifrim are even sweeter. They're even more geschmack than Pnimiyas HaTorah. Pirush, Yena Shal Torah, Hu, Pnimiyas HaTorah, V'Soidei Seha. Yeah, the Soidos, the secrets of the Torah, as they're revealed. K'mesha Amru Razal, Nichnas Yayin Yotza Soid. So what is wine? Wine are the secrets. Nevertheless, Divrei Seifrim Arevim Al Knesses Yisrael Yeser Misedes HaTorah. Still, for a Yid, the Rabbanons are sweeter. Why? Ki kol hagdorim v'achumis shebedivrei Razal. All of these chumras, all the stringencies, and all the darkei musar, he's going to speak about, the Alter Rebbe speaks about chumrah in the negative and in the positive, in the sur meira and in the asay tov. Different ways that we conduct ourselves, l'chumrah. All the different darkei musar, sheba agodis, upirkei yovis, kulam nimshachim mibchinas avarabba. All of these, just to understand what the Alter Rebbe is saying. Where is it in Torah? How did Torah expand so broadly? Because of Hashem's incredible love for the Yidden. Kamesha Kosov, Ahafti Eschem Amar Hashem. Here goes, one of the main points of the Maimon. Kamei lo marshal Adam, like we find by a person. Machmas ahavase al-benoi, when you love your child. Medaktek ima yosef, he's very careful. Lahaisif olav shmira mu'ula, he's he protects him in incredible ways. Bisiyagim ugdarim b'chala efshiri, bal korchach, even against his will. In the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, in the Ma'amorim Aktzorim, the Alter Rebbe writes that even when a person is washing their child, and their child is resisting it, and they're fighting, they want to play in the mud, and they want to stay dirty, so against their will, the father cleans him. And why? Out of love. He doesn't say, oh, that's what you want. You know what? Okay, you don't want me to change it? I won't change your diaper. You don't want, no. You go and you clean. And so the more you love something, the more careful you are. V'chein chafetz me'oid sheyimtza chein v'seichel. The Yeser says, a person wants that his child should impress and should be endeared by all those who meet him. So therefore, he treats him with extra, right? His practices with the child are on a very special level. Ukumei l'moshel margolius. For instance, a diamond. The more precious it is, you protect it, you guard it more. Everyone understands that in business, people who are involved with, let's say, data that's very sensitive, or people that are involved with matters that are very precious, like with transporting diamonds, right? Or the higher the value, so the more they get paid, right? A doctor who works with the parts of the person who are more delicate, and more right? The internal organs, so they're paid more. So the more precious something is, the greater the shmir. So the Abistair, what emerges is dafke in Golus, the Abistair's intensified love for the Yidden is revealed. I just want to bring here this nakoda, although the Alter Rebbe will bring it later. We all know, one of the first mishalim that we learn in Chassidus as children is the idea that kol hagavoya beyoser noifel lamata yoser. The higher something is, the lower it falls. Right? I remember when we were learning this halacha, we were learning also a corresponding Gemara, right? About two shutfim owned a home b'shutfas, habayis v'ha'aliyah, right? And then the stones fell. So now we identify by the way they fell, which stones belong to whom, right? Depending on how they fall, if they imploded, if they fell. So the farther something goes, the more, right? The higher it was lechatchila, the lower it falls. During the time of the Beis Hamikdash, being that the Yidden were in a high place, a higher place, so the Eir Eliki that shone on the Yidden was basic. Dafke bisman agolos, when the Yidden are far away. Dafke when the Yidden are cleaning up their own darkness. That's where you have an intensified Eir Eliki. That's why the pasuk says, "Vahashem yagi'a choshki." So the pasuk says, "Vahashem," Hashem with. It's an intensified Shem Havaya. Yagia Choshki illuminates my darkness. In order to be meir as HaChoshech, it's dafke in a higher darga of elikus. Yeah, some of you may remember, I just want to say this, we have to translate it clearly, right? This is where the Chelm story is very appropriate. A guy's looking for his keys, right? At night, under the street light. Say, what are you looking for? Looking for my keys. Where did you lose them? On the other block. Why are you looking here? Because there's a light. That's the Chelm story, right? In the Loshin, in the Maimer Anila Doidi, where do we find the Abistair? Where we lost him. Uvikashtem mishom es Hashem alekecha. It's in our aveiros, in our weaknesses, that's where we find the Abistair. So that's Vahashem Yagia Choshki, it's in our Choshech that the Abistair is made. And we have to understand exactly what that means. Right? Akoponim. Kach, back to the Pnim. Machmas Goydel Ahavasa Yizborech Eleinu. Out of the great love of Hashem to the Yidden, Machmir umedaktek aleinu b'digdukei seifrim. So now there are so many chumras. Shehein heima divrei teirasai. This is what I was saying earlier. It's not that we made this. It's the Eibishter's Torah, but it's dafke in this time. Dafke in Bayis Sheni and later. Hanim shachais me'ava rabba. It's Hashem's great love that extends to give us. Now the Alter Rebbe will soon explain how this works. What does this mean? B'siyagim ugdarim lezakoiseinu, to refine us. L'toiv lanu, that it should be good for us. Sheniya nikiyim lefonav yizbarich, that we should be cleansed and clean. So a person shouldn't come along and resent and be angry at the chumras. Says, oh, the whole Chassidische Welt, they eat all Chassidische Shchita. You know how limited it is, how limiting it is to eat only Chabad Shchita. I can't handle such a chumrah. I am so limited. Instead of feeling smothered by it, squashed by it, to feel redeemed. This is the Goydel Ahavasai. This is from the great, it's a schus for us that we should be cleansed. Alter Rebbe goes back a little bit. During the time of the Beis HaMikdash, it was enough just to learn Torah. In other words, remember what I said earlier. What does it mean it was enough to learn Torah? It was enough to connect to Hashem with our thoughts and our hearts. We didn't need so much action. We were loyal to the Abistair. We weren't drawn, we weren't enticed to other taivas. In other words, how could a person coming from the Beis HaMikdash, seeing the miracles in the Beis HaMikdash, seeing that Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, how could a person be machshiv, anything else, seeing such glory, all of Eilam Hazeh is garnished. For Haya B'Nakel, it was easy, Lias Avas Hashem Kavua B'Leiv Kol Ish, that every person could feel in a fixed way, meaning it wasn't from time to time. It was kavua. It was always there. It was set in his heart. Liyos bis lahavus la'avedus Hashem b'terosei, to serve Hashem with passion. And gam b'bli shenis eirer mizeh ava rabba, even without an ava rabba, without this intrinsic, the ava in the DNA, this fantastic ava rabba, just an ordinary ava. In other words, we say parents have only a ben yochid, so the ava is intensified. And imagine if parents didn't have children for many years, and then they had a child. Wow, such ava! Now they love their child. We didn't, during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, we didn't need such extraordinary conditions to allow us to appreciate the child. An ordinary child, an ordinary life, we could appreciate the Abistair. However, the generations passed. Ki nismatu halavavis hashlemis ba'avedis Hashem ba'ava aza b'rish be'esh. The hearts were diminished, and at the same time, v'nichvinu be'esh zara, we've been scorched with foreign passions, ba'avas v'taivas gufnias. V'chol kach govru aleinu. Taivas are so intense. Ala shalinucha laved Hashem ba'ava. We can't. In the lashon of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe writes in the Mamorim Aktsarim, the Alter Rebbe says he davens in kol zeh. He says anachnu royim shehagam shem mizboinen b'seder atfila. They're davening and they're being mizboinen, but loynis oirer akirish pe'esh le'echad. Their hearts are not waking up, even in the times of the Alter Rebbe. So the only way is shenis eirer mizeh ava rabba. We have to find a way for this super ava. How do we get the super ava? Al yedei dikduke soifrim v'chumbreihem b'chol pratehem. To embrace Yiddishkeit in this extraordinary way, that our entire life should be completely consumed with chumris and all the different details. Hein bebchina sur meira, in what to stay away from. B'kol achumris shebegemaru poiskim, everything that we find. The hein bebchinas v'asei toiv, also in the positive, what we should do. B'divrei musar shebe'agodis, like what we find in Tana Devei, in Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, Pirkei de Rabbi Nosson, Mila de Ovis and Pirkei Ovis, Ayin Toiva, right? To look at everyone with a good eye. Sheyiras chaverei b'toiv ayin, to look at people favorably, positively. And then he says, Ve'roas re'ehu al yachshov b'liboy, to completely wipe away any thought of negativity about another person, which is a madrega. It's an asay toiv, a way to go about life, but not to dwell on any negativity in another person. V'chein leif toiv, to be good-hearted, and to be a chaver toiv. All of these things are lifnim mishudas adin. Just to put things in context for a minute, I want to, just to express this for a moment, I want to frame it in this way. You know, Seder Nezikin is divided into three parts: Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. So, Mesechtes Nezikin. So, Baba Kama talks about laws of damages, that if we wouldn't have these laws, the world wouldn't be inhabitable. We can't go around smashing each other's windows. There has to be order. In a certain way, when it comes to the laws of damages, Yidden and Goyim are equal. I'm not talking about all the different machloikes in the Gemara, but halacha, you're not allowed to break a Goy's window either. In other words, what kind of world is that? A world of chaos. When you look at Baba Metzia deals with halachas which aren't necessary for the world to be civilized. They're like a step up, like returning a lost object, or being a shomer chinam, offering to watch something for someone, or lending someone money. All of those things, it's not like, if people wouldn't lend each other money, we couldn't go on existing in the world. If people didn't return, if no one would watch things for you, what kind of world is this? Where are we coming to? No, it's all, these are noble ways of living. When it comes to noble ways of living, there we have a distinction between Yidden and Goyim. In other words, with a Goy, we charge interest. With a Yid, we may not. When it comes to Hashava Saveda, the halacha is that in a city where the majority are Goyim, there's no mitzvah of Hashava Saveda. Only by Yidden there's Hashava Saveda. So we find a contrast between these two halachas. So what the Alter Rebbe, in thinking about the practice, what the Alter Rebbe is saying here, the lifnai v'lifnim mishuras adin, you know, there's a story. I remember seeing it once, but I heard it from Rabbi Majeski. He says that some people came to someone, I don't know, to a Rav in a city in the time of the Alter Rebbe, while the Alter Rebbe they were masering and they were being roidef, and they were giving him a hard time, and they came to this Rav of this test, whatever it was, and they said the Alter Rebbe is going to be passing by, either on the way to prison or whatever it was, and they're petitioning the Rav to request that all the people of the city should go to the road, and when the Alter Rebbe passes by, they should throw stones at him. So the Rav was a frum Jew, and he said he never heard such a thing, to throw stones at a Jew. What's going on? He said, no, terrible, terrible. And he started asking him questions. He puts on tefillin. Yeah, not 4 pairs of tefillin. Says he wears tzitzis. Yeah, a bigger shear. Anyway, the kids are right. A whole list. So it didn't sound right to the Rav. So the Rav said, he's going to invite all the people. The people are insisting that it's such a mitzvah and it's so important and they must go. So he says he's torn. He doesn't know what to do, but he hears that it may be very important. So he asked everyone to come out. Everyone should be ready with stones. And when the Alter Rebbe passes by, he's going to look at him. And when he looks at him, he's going to make a judgment on the spot, and he'll give the cue if it's okay, they should throw stones or not. So when the Alter Rebbe came through and he looked like a malach. So the Rav said they should throw stones on the person who came to him to petition that, right, that they should throw stones at the Alter Rebbe. So when we talk about Chumrah, on one of the videos of the testimony of the early years of the Rebbe's life, one of the people there talks about how his father was by a certain Rav in France or wherever it was, and the Rebbe came to ask him about going across the border, if you're allowed to endanger yourself to get an esrig, Yanaver esrig. And the Rav said you're not allowed to. And then he said the Rebbe disappeared for 2 days, whatever it was. And when the Rebbe came back, he had a esrig, a Yanaver esrig. He describes traveling for a Jew and at that time and what was happening. And there was another esrig from somewhere else. But he says most of the people ended up benching that year on the esrig that the Rebbe brought. But I remember once we were farbringing with Rapinya Korf, Olav Shalom, and Rapinya said he lamented how nowadays a chumrah is just another few dollars. I'm not minimizing. For some people, another few dollars means a lot. But once in a while, someone says, I want to get a pair of tefillin for my son. He's becoming bar mitzvah. What kind of tefillin do you want? Rolls Royce. The best, right? What is it? This is a few hundred here, a few hundred, another. But what it was, right? What it took back in the day for every single Hidur mitzvah was incredible. Just the effort and the length that people went to get every string of tzitzis and every single aspect. So this idea of chumrah, of a person living their life with just a complete incredible focus on doing everything in a 100% kosher way. And I should also say, Rabbi Levke Kaplan, Olav Shalom, so you know who he was. Some of you know. Rabbi Levke was a very special Jew, a Yirei Shamayim, a Rebbe for many years, and then a Mashpia. In the summertime, so he would work with the kids in camp, and he would teach them the Pirush Hamilos of Kriya Shema. And he would explain that even though la halacha, if you don't know the meaning of all the words, you're yoytze the mitzvah, but being that there's a disagreement, why fulfill the mitzvah only in a way that's valid according to some opinions? You should know the meaning of everything, and that way you're yoytze the mitzvah according to all opinions. So he would teach them the Hayim Shemaya, and he would tell them, Tiroishcha, Vasafta the Ganecha, Tiroishcha v'Yitzarecha, right? So he would, the Gancha, your grain, and Tiroishcha, your wine, and Yitzarecha, your oil, and they would repeat it in class many, many, many times. Tiroishcha is wine and Yitzarecha is oil. And then when they would go on a trip, he would keep candies in his pocket, and he would just approach a boy and he would say, what's Yitzarecha? So the kid would say, other wine, other boimel. Either wine, right? So just, in other words, this idea to be yoytze the mitzvah according to all opinions. Right? I don't want to get in trouble, but if we say that Seif Zman Kriya Shema, if there's an earlier time that you're yoytze according to more opinions, so to be yoytze by the earlier time, and so on and so forth. So it's our whole life that we could embrace. And the Alter Rebbe is saying here that through living our life by embracing all of these chumras, Hashem gifts us with Ava Rabbah, that we should love Him in a way that transcends seichel. In a way, we should love Hashem not as a result of a meditation or as a result of learning, but just to feel incredible love and gratitude to Hashem, just as a feeling in our heart. V'ayin mashakosov, b'dibur ha'maschil koysev aruchu es b'nei Yisrael. Look in the Maimer there in Parshas Nosoi, and what does it say? The Gemara says, Hashem said to the Malachim, how could I not favor the Jewish people? The Malachim had a taina to Hashem. You, Hashem, said that a judge is not allowed to favor a litigant. Asher lo yisaponim v'lo yikach shoichav, and then you, Hashem, yisaponim, you're nice upon him to the Yidden. So the Abistair says, how could I not? Look, I told them v'yachalta v'savoto v'irachta that you have to bench when you're satiated, and they eat a kazayis, a kabetza, they bench. So they're medaktekim, the Lashon HaGemara, they're medaktekim al atzman at kazayis, they're medayik, and they make a bracha. Nimtzo. What do we see? Shal yidei shekneses Yisrael medaktekim al atzman. Lahachmir al atzman beyoyser mimashakosu b'teirish b'ksav, that we take upon ourselves more than in Chumash. Mizeh, as a result, nimshach b'chinas yisa Hashem panov. That's what brings Hashem's love. Shu b'chinas ava rabbo shelamayla miyashtalshlus. It's beyond our emotion or our learning. The nimshach b'chinas u'elecha mamish, and that ava draws in us avas Hashem. Liyais gilui avarabazu gam ba'adam. We should love Hashem in that way, like it's explained in the Maimer Shchirani v'nova hanal. Sha'yidei zeh tis'ala hanefesh habam is gamkein. The nefesh habam is too. In other words, when we love Hashem as a result of learning, the nefesh habam is disagrees or doesn't get it. But when a person loves Hashem naturally, the nefesh habam is also drawn. And take a look. I am Ashakosov in Parshas Miketz. Soif Dibur Amaschil Ki'ato Neiri Gabe V'hine B'doyrus Harishonim Chulu Avol Doyrus Ha'achroinim. Where he explains this Indian. V'zehu V'havaya Yagi Achoshki. That V'havaya, the higher level of Havaya, illuminates my darkness. Why is it Vahavaya? Because it's beyond the Ishtalshalos. And that's the union of Yisro Hashem Ponev Eilecho, V'hainu Ayideshem Megdaktekim Al Atzman, because the Yidden are particular and they find in every way how to limit and apply and serve the Abistair in even more than what's written in Torah Shebiksav. And like it's written in Rayim Mehem the Parshas Pinchas, Shehu bechinas Yisa'ehu alev rasoi, that Hashem Yisa, He loves them more than the connection through the limbs. Yisa'ehu alev rasoi, higher than the Evarim, higher than the mitzvahs that are Hashem's Evarim. L'mayla mimashenim shachayidei ramach pikudin. Inon ramach evarim de malka. I am the Gemara Megillah. The Gemara brings that the Chachamim asked, the Talmidim asked the elders, "B'ma'arachta yomim, what mitzvah did what practice did you do that gave you long life?" And their responses weren't, "We were Mekayim the 613 mitzvahs." They all answered some form of chumrah, something stringent, something extra that they did. Zeu shekosuf, this is the meaning. I just want to mention that some of the very Rabbi Avram Mayor was a Chassid who lived there. People knew him. Rabbi Avram Mayor would speak about the elder, the Chassidim from from what he saw in Lubavitch. So he would say that when he was a bocher, people told him that Reb Itcher der Masmid, there are things that happen that are like borderline, miraculous. He has like these, and he says, I tried to trick him. A few times I tried to trick him and I couldn't. So one of the things was that, I'm not going to go, there's a long story with Rabbi Lezer Ananas, but the Reb Itcher was careful. In Russia, most of the people ate bread pas palter, because the government owned everything, and everything was they waited online for bread. To get flour and to bake bread privately was very, very difficult, if not impossible. And everyone knows that bread, you have to bake frequently. Right? 3 days later, it's hard. It's not, So, but the Rabbi had a chumrah that he only ate bread baked in a certain in the Althois family had a few brothers, and he only ate the bread from one of the home, one of the brothers. I'm sure the others were from too. But Al Kopanim, there was a Maisa that he ran out of bread, and he would only eat once a day. So when he came to eat at night, he remembered that he forgot to get bread. So he went to sleep hungry. He drank a tea, whatever it was, and then the next day he forgot again, and then the next night. Anyway, the kids said this. So they tried to trick him. At that time there was a curfew. So Rabbi the Masmid was begging that Leis and Nanas should go get bread from Altai's home. But it was after 9 o'clock, it was curfew. And Rabbi promised him nothing is going to happen. So Rabbi Leis and Nanas hid in the Weibishul, and like 20 minutes later he came out with bread from the other Altai's. Right? And then Rabbi washed, and he started making a bracha, and he got into big dvekus, and then he fainted, but he didn't eat it. So Avraham Mayor said he himself a few times he tried different things to trick him, but it didn't work. Right? So this type of chumrah, right, that a person it brings, this just a special avos Hashem, a special avos Hashem that's beyond seichel. Right? Imagine that you're at an event and everybody's eating, and for some reason you're not eating. And then someone comes in and says that there's something questionable. So there's a certain, a certain connection. Oh, now he comes back to the pasuk. Zeu shekosuv v'shama aviha es nidra. The Alter Rebbe is now going to say that aviha is HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the position of a father. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the position of a mother, and there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the position of a father. Yom Kippur, Hashem is in the position of a mother. And he says that's why on Yom Kippur relations are forbidden. Because union with Hashem is only possible when the Yidden when Hashem is in the position of the father. He says, Avram Avinu said, by Sarah, when they took Sarah, and then later he justified himself. He said that she's Bas Avi, Achloi Bas Imi. You teach those psukim? No? Right? She says, it's Akopanim is talking about how Sarah is related. I said, Achoisi, really she is my sister. Right? So the lashon of the pasuk is Bas Avi, but not Bas Imi. If it's from the mother's side, then there's no union. It's from the father's side. When Hashem is in the position of Kodesh, then Kodesh Yisrael LaHashem. Then Yisrael LaHashem. Then there's a union. As a father, then that's in the state of Ava Rabbah. I also want to mention that in other areas, there's a lot of talk nowadays about how important it is with children that the axis of our relationship should be love, right? Versus discipline, Kabbalah soil, verses in the past, and sometimes it's misunderstood. The love is misunderstood, and the ava it has like a healing power. Love has a power to heal wounds. So when people are hurt, when we show them ava, it heals them. So what he's saying here in the pasuk, V'shama aviha, when the Abistair hears and loves the Yidden, and Hashem loves the Yidden with such intensity, it heals the Yidden, that it removes the wounds, the esara, the bandages that tie us to Eilam Hazeh. In other words, if Yiddishkeit, sometimes people move to Crown Heights. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get personal. And then they say, I came here and it's cold. I don't know anyone. And I don't know, it's not what I imagined. Right? We imagine some type of healing, some type of feeling of connection. So the position of Aviha, when there's that warmth, that connection, so that the attachment to Olam Hazeh is removed. The Esara, Asher Asra al Nafsha, are stripped away. Heini Aviha Oisa. The father removes the Nedarim. Sheha'av Meferes HaNeder. Ki mibchinas Ava Rabba. From the great love, who Mefer, he annuls, Ketargumai Mevatel, Kol Ha'isurim, V'Hakishurim, all forbidden things, all attachment, Asher Knesses Yisrael, Hi Asura Kshura, that we're attached to Olam Hazeh. And he says very powerful words. You see, I don't know, the Mashpiyim, sometimes they don't tell us this. He says, Ve'ein chovush matir atzmai. We cannot free ourselves. Our attachment to Olam Hazeh is greater, that we don't have the power to rip ourselves away. It's only Hashem's love, which we receive through the extra chumras. Ki ma'idei miras ava rabba b'chinas aviyah. And now the parentheses. The final part of the Maimer. The inyan o yisurim. What are these forbidden things? Shehi asura ukshura bahen, which we're attached to, which we're tied to. Yesh loymar, dahainu chalishas koyach hanefesh, that our nefesh is weak. She'ein bekoycha lotzes min arteika u'masara, we're not able to free ourselves from the chumriyas haguf and the nefesh habamis. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, there's an overwhelming laziness. There's a numbness of the heart. We try to daven and it doesn't respond. We don't feel it. And he said, and like he says in the Maimer of Yisroi, V'sham nisbayer, shal yidei ha'toira nimshach koyach ve'oiz lenefesh levatel kishurim elu. In the Maimer of Yisroi he says that the Torah strengthens the neshama and weakens the Yetzer Hara. B'makom acher nisbayer, and another Maimer he says that this attachment to Olam Hazeh is called a sircha. How do we say a sircha in English?
Blemish.
Blemish?
Mess up.
No. A lesion. Lesion?
Yeah.
A lesion that's attached. Shehanefesh, we get stuck. Shehanefesh mistabeches bahem. We get entangled in Olam Hazeh. You know, how often does it happen that a person is going to have a tough conversation with someone, and they say, I'm going to keep my cool, I'm not going to let them get to me, I'm not going to scream, I'm going to be level-headed, right? And then a person pushes a few buttons, boom! What happened? What happened to everything I promised myself? The nefesh is very weak, it's mistabeches, it's stuck. That's the inyan of the chumras, the nedarim, that help free us. This is why before Yom Kippur we annul our vows. It's not, in other words, we're annulling our vows. No. Our emotion of tshuva, our thoughts of tshuva, they free us. You know, like that spray that takes off the sticky stuff? What's it called? Oops, what's it called? You know what I'm talking about? Goo gone, yeah. Right? Tshuva frees us from being stuck. It's bittul hakishurim and gilui ha'ava rabba b'nefesh. Oh, okay. We're going to be finished here now. It's time for Ma'ariv. It's a few lines. It's already okay. Yashikoyach, everyone, for joining. I want to thank all those that I know it's not easy after a long day to stay awake. I want to give you a big Yashikoyach.